The air was thick with the stench of decay, a miasma that clung to the walls of the apartment like a shroud. It was day 11, and the world outside had become a cacophony of despair, punctuated by the distant wails of the copycats. I could hear them, their voices echoing through the cracked windows, a haunting symphony of the damned. Each sound was a reminder of the life I once knew, a life that had slipped through my fingers like sand. I had spent the night huddled in the corner of my living room, clutching the shotgun, its cold metal a meager comfort against the encroaching darkness. The flickering lights overhead cast long shadows that danced mockingly, as if the very walls were alive, taunting me with the knowledge that I was utterly alone. I had not seen another soul in days, and the silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional scuttling of something unseen. The copycats had grown bolder, their presence a constant reminder of my mortality. I had learned to recognize their sounds, the way they mimicked the cries of the desperate, the way they whispered sweet nothings that turned to screams. They were predators, and I was their prey, trapped in a game I had no hope of winning. As I sat there, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. It was a sensation that crawled up my spine, a primal instinct that told me to run, to hide, to do anything, but remain still. But where could I go? The streets were a graveyard, littered with the remnants of those who had ventured out only to be consumed by the very monsters I feared. I had to find a way out. The thought consumed me, gnawing at the edges of my sanity. I needed to escape this prison, this hell that had become my life. But how? The copycats were everywhere, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the moment I would let my guard down. Day 12 dawned with a heavy heart. I had resolved to venture out, to explore the other apartments in the building, to scavenge for anything that might help me survive. I knew it was a risk, but the alternative was death by starvation, a fate I could not accept. I crept through the hallways, my heart pounding in my chest, every creak of the floorboards a reminder of the danger that lurked just beyond my sight. The first apartment I entered was empty, a shell of what it once was. The furniture lay overturned, remnants of a life interrupted. I rummaged through the cabinets, finding little more than dust and despair. But then, in the corner of the kitchen, I spotted a glimmer of hope, a can of beans untouched and waiting for me. I snatched it up, cradling it like a precious gem, and turned to leave. That's when I heard it. A low, guttural growl emanating from the shadows, a sound that sent chills racing down my spine. I froze, my breath hitching in my throat. The growl grew louder, more insistent, and I knew I had to move. I bolted for the door, adrenaline surging through my veins. But as I reached for the handle, I felt a presence behind me. I turned slowly, dread pooling in my stomach. There it was, a copycat, its form shifting and contorting in the dim light. It was a grotesque parody of humanity, its face a twisted mask of familiarity. I recognized the features, the eyes, the smile. It was the old woman from my building, the one who had once brought cookies to my door. Now she was a monster, a hollow shell of the person I had known. "Help me," it whispered, the voice a chilling echo of the past. "Please don't hurt me." I stumbled back, the can of beans slipping from my grasp and rolling across the floor. I could feel the tears prickling at the corners of my eyes, the weight of despair crashing down on me. This was not just a monster, it was a reminder of everything I had lost, everything that had been taken from me. I turned and ran, the sound of its laughter following me as I fled back to my apartment. I slammed the door shut, locking it with trembling hands, and sank to the floor, gasping for breath. I was losing my grip on reality, the lines between the living and the dead blurring with each passing day. Day 13 brought no relief. The copycats were relentless, their numbers growing as they prowled the hallways, searching for any sign of life. I could hear them whispering, their voices a haunting melody that echoed in my mind. I was trapped in a nightmare, and there was no waking up. I spent the day in a haze, my thoughts spiraling into darkness. I had to find a way to fight back, to reclaim my life from these monsters. But how? The military had failed, the world had crumbled, and I was left to fend for myself in a city overrun by nightmares. As night fell, I made a decision. I would confront the copycats, face them head on. I had nothing left to lose. I gathered what little supplies I had, my neighbor's shotgun, a few cans of food, and the journal that had become my lifeline. I would not go quietly into the night. I would fight for my survival. Day 14 arrived with a sense of purpose. I stepped out of my apartment, the shotgun clutched tightly in my hands. The hallways were dark, the shadows deepening as I moved forward. I could hear the whispers, the laughter, the sounds of the copycats lurking just out of sight. But I pressed on, fueled by a determination I had thought long lost. I reached the stairwell, the air thick with tension. I could feel their eyes on me, watching, waiting for the moment I would falter, but I would not give them that satisfaction. I descended the stairs, each step echoing in the silence until I reached the ground floor. The lobby was a graveyard of memories, the remnants of a life that had once thrived. I could see the shadows moving, the copycats shifting in the corners, their forms indistinguishable from the darkness. I raised the shotgun, my heart racing, and called out into the void. "Show yourselves," I shouted, my voice trembling but resolute. "I'm not afraid of you." The shadows stirred, and one by one they emerged. The copycats, grotesque and twisted, surrounded me, their eyes glinting with malice. I could feel the weight of their gaze, the hunger that radiated from their forms, but I stood my ground, refusing to back down. "Why do you fight?" one of them hissed, its voice a chilling whisper. "You cannot win. You are alone." "I am not alone," I replied, my voice steady. "I have my will to survive, and that is enough." With that, I pulled the trigger. The deafening blast echoed through the lobby, and the copycats recoiled, their forms shifting in confusion. I had no idea if I had hit anything, but it didn't matter. I was fighting back, reclaiming my life from the darkness. But as the smoke cleared, I realized the truth. The copycats were not just monsters. They were reflections of my own fears, my own despair. They thrived on my suffering, feeding off the remnants of my hope. And in that moment, I understood that the battle was not just against them, but against myself. Day 15 came with a heavy heart. I had fought, but the war was far from over. The copycats were still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the moment I would falter. But I would not give in. I would continue to fight, to survive, to hold on to the flicker of hope that still burned within me. As I sat in the darkness, I realized that the true horror was not the monsters outside, but the darkness within. I had to confront my own demons to face the truth of my existence. And in that realization, I found a glimmer of strength. The world may have crumbled around me, but I was still here. I would not let the copycats win. I would survive, no matter the cost. And as I closed my journal, I knew that my story was far from over. The shadows may be closing in, but I would fight until my last breath, because in the end, survival is not just about living. It's about fighting for the light in the darkness. And I would not let the copycats extinguish that light.